Welcome, welcome, everyone. We'll let everybody grab a seat and get comfortable, and then we'll begin. Happy New Year. Did everybody have a good New Year's Eve and New Year's Day?
Mine was lovely, relaxing.
Me too. Me too. How about you, Bob? Did you do anything?
Uh, well, we enjoyed quiet.
We did too. We did
We
too.
we, uh, we slept in the new year. Went to
That,
bed in 2024 and woke up in 2025.
there you go. There you go. My nephew sent me I've got a great nephew who it was the first time he stayed up late enough to watch the ball drop. And watching that video of this young boy who was like, "Oh, it's coming, 10, not so excited." I thought, wow, I just so take for granted. You just watch it and you're like, what? He's like, wow, it's the new year. Everybody, you can put where you're from. We've got Robert Blesser from Illinois. Welcome, welcome. Feel free to hop in the chat and put where you're located. And I'm going to change my little chat thing so I can type to everyone. And I am just outside Philly. And it is cold today. It is cold.
Yeah, we're getting ready for some snow.
I know. We got 2 storms coming.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right.
Winter kind of skipped us for a couple years, I think, Teresa, in the Philadelphia area, but it is back.
It is back, but I don't think it's going to be huge. I think we're just going to get a little bit. So that's nice. Oh, we got some friends from Lancaster. Amy, good to see you. Central Florida. Katie, good to see you. Pottstown. Wow, far, far away. Stephen from Ghana, you may get the prize. You might get the prize. Todd from North Carolina. Virginia Beach, Mary Jo. Tim Conniff, Doylestown, my good friend. Tara, good to see you. Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Look at people are from all over. Let's get started, my friends. Welcome to another exciting edition of Meet the Author on Zoom and not at the Pyramid Club. I am your host and your MC for the day, Teresa Hummel-Krallinger. And you know what, Bob? I'm going to ask you to wait for that because I am actually going to show a screen.
I'm sorry.
That's all right, man. I'm going to show a screen. So we have some programs coming up, so we're going to get that, or maybe I won't. Maybe I won't show a screen. Let me get out here and pull that screen up. There it is. All right. Share screen, share screen. We've got some programs coming up that I would love for you to attend. February 28th at noon on Zoom. We have Stephen Robinson. Stephen Robinson, very, very cool author. This is his book, Aliens Among Us, 10 Surprising Truths About Gen Z. So we're going to talk about Gen Z, but we're also going to talk about employee engagement for all of us, all generations. So that is going to be very cool. In April 25th, we have Jamie Cooperstein, who was the concierge at the Ritz Hotel in Philadelphia. And she has written a book called True Hospitality. We are going to get it hot off the press. It isn't even out yet, but she will be joining us right after that book is published. In March, we'll do a quick stop share here. In March, we are hoping to have an in-person program at the Pyramid Club. I have a comedy friend from the West Coast that I'm trying to see if I can find a way to get him in. He just published a book. He could do some comedy. So we're hoping to do that at the end of March. So for those of you who are first timers at Meet the Author, we have been around 11 years. We are actually number 4 on Philadelphia Business Journal's Best Networking Association. How crazy is that? And the networking goes for online as well. So I'm hoping in the chat room, you're connecting with others. If you want to put your LinkedIn profile link to get connections or an email address for people to write to you, feel free to share because a big part of Meet the Author is making friends. along the way, and you can make some great contacts here. We are honored today to have my good friend Lysandra Cheatham, who is our chat room ambassador. Lysandra, tell us about you.
Hi, greetings everyone from wherever in this world you are joining us from. Thank you so much. My name is Lysandra Cheatham, and I am first and foremost a passionate learner. So I am so excited today to lean in with curiosity and intrigue to Bob's message and learn more about the book Leading with Questions. My day job, I'm in management consulting, but across all the roles that I've had, throughout different industries, long-term care, student affairs, nonprofit. The thing that it transcends all of it is my superpower. I consider it a superpower, curiosity. So I think the topic today is more than relevant. I'm excited to support as your chat room ambassador for this learning experience. You'll find me off camera, but in the chat. So I'll be engaging there. So keep an eye on both, and we look forward to today's experience.
Nice. Thank you, Lysandra. Always good to have a partner in crime on the show. So we are ready. I don't think there's anything I haven't said that I should have said. So we are now ready to introduce our guest author. And Bob, I think we met in LinkedIn. Am I correct in saying that? Did we meet in LinkedIn?
Yes, you are correct.
Yes. So you never know who you're going to meet in LinkedIn. You never know. But I was grateful that Bob reached out to me because first of all, this thought leadership is amazing. And you all know, any of you that know me, know that I am a big fan of management and leadership development. And this is a powerful tool for leaders to have that many may not even realize is such a powerful tool. So let me tell you a little bit about Bob. He's coming to us from Texas. He has been on the staff of Cru, formerly known as Campus Crusade for Christ, for 53 years, serving 8 years in Cru campus and then 24 years as the CEO of Josh McDowell Ministry, a division of Cru. Now 21 years on the U.S. Leadership Development Team, developing the next generation of leaders for Cru. His blog, this is where it really got all of this started. His blog, Leading with Questions, is now in its 12th year and is followed by leaders in over 200 countries. He has written 6 very popular books, and kindly, he has sent me all of them. I have every one. Bob has written 6 very popular books, including Great Leaders Ask Questions, a Fortune 100 list, and now That's a Great Question. And his newest book is the 3rd edition of Leading with Questions. So if you don't already have a copy, you want to make sure you get a copy of this. It is wonderful. His mission is to help leaders everywhere multiply their leadership effectiveness times 10 by moving from "let me tell you" to instead, "let me ask you." He's married to Sherry for 53 years and is the proud dad of 4 adult children, all married, and 9 incredible grandchildren. Your parties have to be crazy, Bob, all who love to ask Papa Bob questions. Please welcome Mr. Bob Tiede with Questions for Leaders. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Teresa. I need to start with a confession. And my confession is that for most of my career, I was a benevolent dictator. My only paradigm of leadership was I thought the job of a leader was to figure out what needs to be done and then to tell the staff what you needed to have them do. I did say benevolent. I grew up in a home where I was taught to say please and thank you. So if you'd been on my team, Teresa, I don't think I ever would have said, Teresa, go do this. It'd been more like, hey, Teresa, here's what we're working on this week. It'd really be great if you could please do this. And Teresa, when you did it, I would have said, thank you, Teresa, great job. At a staff meeting, Teresa, stand up. You all need to hear what Teresa did and express appreciation. But again, my only paradigm of leadership was I thought the job of a leader was to figure out what needed to be done and then to tell the staff what you needed to have them do. Now, for me, that changed in 2006. I'm sure you've come to those of you who follow Teresa's Meet the Author regularly, you're a fan of books, you love books like I do. I eat them for breakfast, I say. But in 2006, I found this book, the first edition of Leading with Questions by Dr. Michael McCourt. I had no idea when I purchased it that it would actually change my leadership forever, actually set me on a new path. But this book was filled with stories of leaders who were leading with questions, and it shared the questions they were using. And the stories are about leaders literally from around the globe, not just the US. And as I read this book, I had only one question: why hasn't anyone ever shared this with me before? And begin to understand the value that leaders who lead with questions are more effective. King Solomon said, "A fool finds no pleasure in understanding, but delights in sharing his own opinions." Well, this is going to be an interactive time. I'm not going to be a talking head. True to my brand, I'm going to be leading with questions. And the first question, I'd like you all to go to the chat, and Lysandra is going to read the responses. But and this is not a trick question. In leading, what are the advantages to telling? If you all could type in one advantage when you're leading, one advantage to telling. And as that populates, Lysandra will share them with us.
Okay, Tara, I see speed. And then we also have Tammy writing in better ideas. Efficient. Oh, yes, Teresa. In short run, it's quick. It's a quick resolution, says Mary Jo. Authenticity, Joanne, thank you. Simplicity, Andy. Response, James, yes. Needed in an emergency. Thank you, Amy.
Those are great. Those are great. Keep them coming. Lysandra has promised to send me all of these, and I want to learn from all of you. I've got another question. In leading, what are the advantages of asking questions? Again, if you could type in one answer in the chat, one advantage to asking questions.
Lots of good
I
stuff
apologize.
coming in.
I was on mute. So we
Oh,
have
yeah.
a plethora of answers, actively listening, hear various perspectives, support for the solution, learn about the other person, setting the tone to get other opinions and feelings, learning what you don't know, engagement, better ideas, buy-in. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. Those are absolutely terrific. Now I have another question. I don't have a slide for it, but you can, in the chat, you can answer A or B. In leading, which is better, A, telling, or B, asking? A, telling, or B, asking? In leading, which is better?
Okay, overwhelmingly, I'm seeing be asking.
I have to confess that was a trick question. Lysandra, did anybody put in it depends?
Yes, we have Claire that says unless emergency / danger ahead.
Well, Claire,
Sometimes
you got it.
asking.
Yeah. Here's another question for you all. When you're flying, which wing is more important? The right wing or the left wing? It's like they better both be perfect. And in leading, we actually need both. There is a time when we lead that we need to tell, and there is a time when we lead that we need to ask. But truth be known, a whole lot of us are a lot more practiced at telling than asking. If you can imagine just for a moment your right arm to be your telling arm, I'm guessing most of us would say it's well developed. If you can imagine for a moment your left arm to be your asking arm, I'm guessing most of us would say, well, it doesn't actually have equal strength to the right arm. So today we're going to focus on strengthening the asking arm, not because you don't need the telling, but because you're already good to go on telling. we want to strengthen the asking arm so that we as leaders can have equal strength, that both wings can be perfect. Well, I need to ask someone a question. Lysandra, invite somebody to come on stage with me.
Okay, if you could use your hand raise feature in your Zoom, you can find that in the reaction button at the bottom. It has like a little heart and it says react, and there's an option to raise your hand. If we could have one volunteer come and join Bob on the stage, and I'll promote you to be seen on the screen. Who would like to volunteer?
And if
Oh, I see
we
Robert.
got somebody, there we go. You got it, Lysandra?
Yes, here he is. Yes, Robert.
Okay, Robert. And I know Robert, he goes by Bob. Hi, Bob. You're muted, Bob. You'll have to unmute so we can talk. Okay, hi, Bob.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
I'm good. I have a question for you. Bob, what did you have for dinner last night?
I had a chicken and rice and broccoli Chinese meal.
Wow, wow. Did you go out for that or did you have it at home?
No, we bought it at Trader Joe's.
Okay. Well, that sounds fantastic. Bob, I have a few more questions. The next question is, have you learned the art, Bob, of looking like you're paying attention when somebody is talking on and on and on, when in fact your mind may actually be elsewhere?
Have I learned that art?
Yes.
Yes, I would say I've learned it.
I think all of us have actually learned that art. Bob, let's just say for a moment that I'd already lost you, meaning you looking like you're paying attention, but your mind was elsewhere. Where did your attention come to the moment I said, Bob, can I ask you a question?
Well, they came back into focus.
Yeah. You were like, what's the question? And I wonder what Bob Tiede will ask. And when you heard the question, and I always use this question, I just noticed it took a couple microseconds, portions of a second for you to sort through the files in your brain to think, what did I have for dinner last night? And then, yes, of course, we had that Chinese meal from Trader Joe's, and you could then describe it. Now, Bob, had I asked you to answer a question requiring you to share an opinion, even as you begin to talk, you would have carefully read my face to see, was I understanding? Was I confused? Was I upset? And you would even edit what you continued to say based on seeing my facial response. Another question, Bob. If you want to access the brain power of another person, what do you have to do?
You have to ask them a question.
Yes. It's fascinating to me that when we ask somebody a question, we actually, from the time we say, can I ask you a question? And they focus in and they're listening for the question until they're done with the answer, we have actually made use of 100% of their brain power. So, Bob, thank you so much for helping me with this question. There's something not research from me, but research I found, and this is fascinating. It says when we speak, and the person did not mean like I'm doing today, being upfront. This is true when you're having coffee with a friend, when you're having a one-on meeting conversation with anyone. And I find this really fascinating. He said, imagine a traffic light. It only stays green for 1 or 2 minutes. When you start speaking, you have their full attention for only 1 or 2 minutes, such a short amount of time. If you're talking and not asking and letting them respond, in 2 to 4 minutes, the light turns yellow. And if you talk more than 4 minutes, you ought to just know the light has turned red. They're looking like they're paying attention, but their mind has gone elsewhere. How do you get them back? Of course, you ask another question. Well, I need to invite someone else to come on stage with us. Again, I have a couple questions I want to ask. James has raised his hand, Lysandra.
Okay, I just promoted James. Here we go. Thank you.
And James is actually a friend. I know he goes by Jimmy. Hello, Jimmy.
Hey, Bob, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Well, Jimmy, it says here, a leader who leads with questions is 10 times more effective than a leader who leads by telling. And so my next two slides are to illustrate this, but Jimmy, on the next slide, I'm going to ask a silly question. Just go with me because I'm actually going somewhere with this. Jimmy, this is your team. They're in this big canoe. There's oars for everyone, and you're the leader of this gang. And you want to get that canoe across the lake as quick as possible. How many of them do you want to have row with you?
All of them.
Yeah, I told you it's a silly question. Now, here's the next slide. This is your same team. They're out of the canoe and they're now around your conference table. As you can see, there's an opportunity on the table. Now, listen carefully, Jimmy. If you're a leader like I used to be, the benevolent dictator, and you think it's your job to figure out how to take advantage of the opportunity, and then you're going to tell your staff what you want them to do. In that paradigm, how many mental oars are in the water trying to figure out how to take advantage of the opportunity?
One, pretty much. Yeah, just me.
Yeah, only you, only you. But imagine, Jimmy, that you're a leader who leads with questions. So you share the opportunity, and then you look around the table and you say, hey, gang, what do you all think we might do to take advantage of this opportunity? Now, how many mental oars might be in the water?
I got them all.
Yeah.
Long.
Jimmy, what's the probability that one of your staff may have an idea better than anything you'd thought of?
Pretty good. Very good, actually.
Yeah, not a guarantee, but the probability in hearing all these ideas is one of them may have, wow. And so let's just imagine seated across the table from you is Sarah. And Sarah shares an idea and you're thinking, wow, that's brilliant. That's so much better than anything I was thinking. And so you say, Sarah, love your idea. In fact, Sarah, would you lead our team in executing on that? Jimmy, how hard will Sarah work?
Oh, harder than before.
Whose idea is she executing?
Honestly, hers.
Yes, yes. And again, another scenario is your whole team begins to build on Sarah's idea.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time they're done, everybody's got their fingerprint on the plan. And so they don't feel like, hey, we're executing Jimmy's plan. He never asked for input. We just have to do what the boss says. But now, because of collaboration, they own it together. Mm-hmm. Well, Jimmy, thank you. That's just an illustration of how a leader who leads with questions can be up to 10 times more effective than a leader who just leads by telling. They're hearing more ideas and they're allowing their staff not only to give input, but to gain ownership of the idea. Again, Jimmy, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Bob. Bob, we have a question. Tara says, how do you handle it when they have an idea that is arguably worse? So someone shares and the idea is not the best idea in the room.
Who else has an idea? That would be how I would handle it, is in other words, get a plethora of ideas out there. And we don't have time today. There's again, if you go to my blog and you search on brainstorming, there's several creative ways to do brainstorming. And one of them is the silent method rather than verbal, where you have everybody write down 3 ideas, and then if you can with technology, copy and paste into a Google chat and a Google form of some sort, and then have everyone go through and vote for what they think of that whole thing as the top 5 ideas. And the advantage of that whole thing is, first of all, when you do brainstorming, your verbal processors are the first to talk. Your silent processors sometimes don't, because they think, well, I think all the ideas have been shared. The silent way to brainstorm actually pulls everybody in. And so you're hearing from everybody. So I would just want to increase the number of ideas so that you can select and pick. And with that form, you actually also, I have the staff vote on what they think. Once all the ideas out there are the top 5, they each get 5 votes, and then you call on those people to share more. Well, let's get back to this. Who here, raise your hand, would like to learn to lead with questions in 30 seconds? Raise your hand, and Lysandra, we got several there. Lysandra, bring one on stage.
Okay, let's see. Do we want more than one person, correct?
One person, just one.
Okay, how about
Katie or Claire?
Okay, I see Katie's name first, so I'm going to promote Katie to panelist. Welcome, Katie.
Hello, Katie. You'll have to unmute when you get on stage. There you are. Unmute. You are muted right now.
Hello.
Hello, Katie.
I'm not looking the most gorgeous today, but thank you for having me.
Well, Katie, I am so glad that it's you, because I just think Katie has a photographic memory. Katie is only going to have to hear my 4 favorite questions one time, and she'll instantly have them memorized. And Katie, the reason I asked this question, who would like to learn to lead with questions in 30 seconds, is I often sense from my audience that they'd like to learn to lead with questions, but they imagine they'll have to go get a master's degree in questionology. Like, nice idea. It'd be nice to be a brain surgeon, make the kind of money a brain surgeon makes. But unfortunately, I don't know of any course where you can become a brain surgeon in 30 seconds. But the good news, Katie, is you actually can learn to lead with questions in 30 seconds. But let's see if this is possible. Katie, I have a second hand on my watch, so I'll be the timekeeper. And the time will start when I say, Katie, here's my first favorite question. I'm going to share all 4. And then I'm going to say, Katie, well, do you have them memorized? And you will, because you have a photographic memory. And then I'm going to say, Katie, share them with us. And upon you sharing all 4 successfully, the clock ends. So no pressure, Katie, but you are going to do this perfectly. Are you ready? Okay. I've got the clock. Katie, my first favorite question is, what do you think? Second, what else? Third, what else? Fourth, what else? Katie, do you have them memorized?
I do.
Share them with us.
What do you think, Bob? What else? What else? Anything else?
Wow.
Can I say anything else, or can I say what else?
You can, Katie. 18 seconds. A new record here. Now, some of you are looking just a little skeptical, like, Bob, you can't ask somebody, what do you think? What else? What else? What else? And I said, well, not in that rapid fashion.
Right.
But it's a conversation. And, and Katie, you're going to add a topic to what do you think? Hey, what do you think we ought to do about? How can we take advantage of this opportunity? How could we solve this problem? What could we do to increase attendance? There's going to be a topic. And before I understood this, Katie, I would ask that first question.
And then stop.
I get an answer, and then I moved on. What I didn't understand is that when you ask somebody a question, and we do this ourselves when we're asked a question, is we roll out a safe answer. We're testing the waters. It's intuitive. We're not thinking through that, but intuitively we throw out a safe answer. So, Katie, if I asked you, hey, what do you think about, and you gave me an answer, and I said, well, Katie, that's stupid. Everyone knows that. Well, you're sorry you answered. Next time I ask, I'll get nothing. But when I say, wow, Katie, that's good. What else? Well, you relax, think, wow, Bob appreciates what I'm sharing, and now you'll give me more. And even when I ask the second question, rather than just moving on, I'll say, wow, Katie, I'm picking up a pen. I've got to take some notes. This is so good. Other forms of what else is, hey, please continue. Or Katie, say more about that. And what I've discovered, Katie, it's actually the third or fourth question that gets to their gold nugget, their very best thought. You know, we've all heard the story of the proverbial gold miner, the old guy who mined for gold all his life looking for the gold vein. He never found it. He quits. And after he quit, somebody came along later and discovered the old miner was within 6 inches of the gold vein when he quit. Again, I think it's just a proverbial story, but a great illustration. If you only ask somebody, hey, what do you think? Get their first answer and say thank you and move on. Well, you got close, but you didn't get to their gold nugget. You got to dig a little deeper with, hey, what do you think? What else? Say more about that. Continue. This is really good. And now, Katie, remember the promise here. The question was, who would like to learn to lead with questions in 30 seconds? And Katie, I'm betting you already lead with questions. But for someone who has been like I was, the benevolent dictator, thinking your job is to tell them what to do, with just this question in your next meeting with a staff member one-on-one or with your staff around the table, whatever the topic is, by just saying, hey, what do you all think we might do here? And then listen. And as you hear responses, wow, that's good. What else? Say more about that. You will have moved from leading by telling to leading with questions with just these 4 questions. In introducing me, something Teresa didn't share is that Bob's a farm boy from South Dakota. And not to demean South Dakotans in any way, but I like low-hanging fruit. If leading with questions was complicated, I probably couldn't do it. One of the things I love about leading with questions is so many of the best questions are so simple. What do you think? What else? They're not long, complicated kinds of questions that you think, wow, how would I ever memorize or remember to ask that? Well, Katie, you've been absolutely brilliant. 18 seconds. Thank you. I want to now share my second most favorite question. And I use this question almost always when I'm asked a question. And my second favorite question is, can you please tell me more? Now, here's the reason. So often when I've been asked a question in the past, before I understood this, I'd hear the question and I'd give them an answer. And, you know, most people are very polite. They don't actually say, well, Bob, that actually wasn't my question. They say, oh, thank you. And then they ask another question and you realize they're asking the next question because you missed their first question. Oh, the one person in the world that's not that polite is my wife. She'll ask a question, and if I don't use this and I start to answer, she'll say, there you go again, Robert. You haven't even heard my question. You're already telling me what to do. Well, I have a funny little story I like to share that I'm going to share about the value of asking, can you please tell me more when you're asked a question? Little Johnny is 7 years old. He comes running into the house one day, yelling at his mom, 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 where did I come from? His mom has not been expecting the question, not yet, not at age 7, but collecting her thoughts just a bit, she invites Johnny into the living room where she shares all about the birds and the bees. Little Johnny's eyes are wide as saucers as he takes in every word. And when she's done, she says, so now, Johnny, do you now understand where you came from? And Johnny shouts again, no, Joey said he came from California and asked me where I came from. Now, at that moment, do you think Johnny's mom had wished that when he came running in the house yelling, "Mom, Mom, Mom, where did I come from?" she would have said, "Johnny, can you please tell me more?" He would have said, "Joey said he came from California and asked me where I came from." And she could have said, "Well, boy, you were born right here in Texas. You go tell that Joey you're from Texas." And Johnny would have ran back out of the house with the answer he was looking for. And he would have shouted to Joey, "I'm from Texas." And Johnny's mom could have saved the birds and the bees story for when perhaps that might be the question in a few years. Well, how many times have you answered what you thought was the question only to have missed it? You can see why my second most favorite question now is when I'm asked, rather than immediately answer, to ask them, "Can you please tell me more?" I've never had anyone say, "Nope, not telling you another word." They're always very willing to tell you more. And that buys you time to both understand their question and then to think, how do I want to answer? Or perhaps maybe there's a question I want to ask them to help them discover their answer. Well, moving on, would you like to know the 4 questions used by a popular consultant who makes a handsome 6-figure income? Now, this was a gentleman, and when I met him, he said, "I'm not a subject matter expert. They don't bring me in because I have expertise in a certain area." He said, "I could consult with the head of an airline company on one day, the next day, the head of a pharmaceutical company, on the next day, the head of a computer software company." He said, "Bob, I'd use the same 4 questions." He said, "Might you be curious to know what my 4 questions are?" I said, "Absolutely. In fact, can I write them down?" And he said, "I'd be disappointed if you didn't." Well, here's the 4 questions. He said, "The first question I ask is what's going well. The second is what's not. The third is where you stuck. The fourth, what needs to change." Now, he then said, "Bob, don't miss the first question." He said, "If I'm consulting with somebody new, if I started with the second question, what's not going well?" He said, "I would not get an honest answer." He said, "No one at 8 a.m. in the morning wants to get naked and tell you, 'Yep, we're a bunch of losers here.'" He said, "So I'd never start with what's not going well. I always start with what's going well." Now, he has a whole bunch of what else's, and tell me more about that. And how'd you figure that out? He said, by the time we're done with question 1, they're thinking that I'm thinking that they're one of the most brilliant leaders I've ever spent time with. He said, now that sets the stage for question 2. Because now when I ask question 2, what's not going well, they don't feel that they're confessing, "Yeah, we're a bunch of losers here." It's kind of like, in spite of all the great things happening here, yes, we have a few challenges. And he said, I actually get an honest answer. And then he said, notice question 3 and 4, where are you stuck and what needs to change? He said, Bob, who actually solves their problem for them? And I said, well, it looks like they do. And he said, yes. And at the end of the day, they write me that big check and they call me a brilliant consultant. Well, I was sharing these 4 questions on a podcast with Tom Ziglar. If you've known Zig Ziglar, his father Zig passed a number of years ago. Tom Ziglar now runs Ziglar. And I was on Tom's podcast and just shared on that podcast what I just shared now. And Tom said, well, Bob, I'm a bit of a brain science nerd. I've studied brain science. Can I share with you why that first question is so important? I said, well, Tom, it's your podcast. You can say anything you want. He said, well, Bob, when the brain is processing positive thoughts, positive endorphins are firing. He said, that is actually the perfect place in which to solve problems. And I thought at that moment, oh my goodness, even though I've been sharing about these, how many times as a leader was like, hey, we got a problem to solve. And I didn't understand the benefit of starting with, hey, what can we celebrate? What's going well? And in that context, then say, hey, in spite of all of that, we got an issue we need to address. And not understanding that sometimes slower is faster. I'm sure there's many times, hey, we have a problem that I made by starting with question 2, I made my staff feel like, yeah, the boss thinks we're a bunch of losers here. Not what I wanted to do. If you're ever, let me give you another benefit besides using these in many contexts. If you're invited to be on a board, you're the first meeting as a new board member. At some point, they'll say, hey, have any questions? Say, well, I do. So it would really help give me context for all that's gone on before me here, to hear what's really gone well. What's not going well? Where are we currently stuck? What needs to change? I can guarantee you by the end of that meeting, the existing board members are either going to be saying or certainly thinking, we're so glad that we invited you to be on our board, because your questions will have suddenly made you very valuable to that board. Well, here is Navy Captain Michael D. Abershoff. Behind him is the USS Benfold, one of our nation's most modern warships. When Captain Abershoff took over command, I don't know how the Navy measures morale, but of some 300 vessels in the US Navy, this battleship had the lowest morale of all 300. 18 months later, under Captain Abershoff's command, morale moved to the highest of all ships. He literally took morale on that ship from the lowest to the highest, last to first. How did he do it? Well, he did a whole bunch of things, but the first thing he did upon taking command is he set up 300 one-on-one meetings with the 300 sailors on his ship. Scheduled these meetings for 15 minutes each. And in these meetings, he asked them 3 questions. Again, I love these because you'll have them memorized upon hearing them once. What do you like best about this ship? What do you like least? What would you change if you could? Now, at the end of the first day, Captain Abershoff might have only had time for, maybe 10 or 15 of these meetings. I mean, there was a whole bunch more meetings to go. But there was already buzz on the ship. The new captain, he's different. He's actually asking us for input. And now Captain Abershoff did not promise that he'd make every change that every sailor suggested. But as he's asking and listening, it doesn't take long, and he's thinking to himself, what do you mean we're going to fix that? But when he called the sailors together and announced changes, guess who he gave credit to for the ideas? Yes, the sailors. He'd call their name, have them stand up and thank them for their input and say, we're going to implement that. Now imagine you being a new sailor on that ship. The captain, you had this meeting, but then here's the whole, all the sailors together, and he has you stand and he thanks you for your idea and says, we're going to implement that. First opportunity you had to call home, you took that advantage and you said, you won't believe this, and you would have shared the story. Well, you just hear this story of asking, getting their input, giving them credit for the ideas. And you say, well, of course, morale on that ship had to go up. Well, these are 3 questions you can ask your staff, and you don't have to wait until morale is down. This is one of those things to keep excelling still more, but asking and listening. Well, one of my friends is Cheryl Batchelder. Cheryl wrote a book called Dare to Serve. And I should have had it at my fingertips to show you. Cheryl was for many years the CEO of Popeye's Chicken. And when she became CEO, shares were trading at $10 a share. Popeye's was in trouble. Under her leadership, 6 or 7 years later, when Popeye's was sold to a Canadian firm, shares had moved to $60 a share. Well, her book on Dare to Serve, for me, is the best book on servant leadership I've ever read, because she shares how she actually used the principles of servant leadership to turn Popeye's around. Now, in that book, she asks, how well do you know your staff? Do you know the 3 or 4 events of their lives that have shaped who they are today? Now, anytime I read a great question, I'm looking for who can I ask this question of? And I had just read this question in her book. And 10, 15 minutes later, I'm on a coaching call with one of my crew colleagues in Canada. He's the Associate Leadership Development Director there. His name is Neil. I've known Neil since 2007. We're good friends. And I said, Neil, I've just read this great question. I'd love to ask it of you. He said, Bob, you know I love great questions. What's the question? I said, Neil, what would you say are the 3 to 4 events that have most shaped who you are today? And I didn't actually think I'd learn anything new. I thought I knew Neil's whole story. Well, it turns out I was wrong. Neil said, well, Bob, have I ever shared with you that my birth father died when I was 9 months old? I said, no, Neil, you've never shared that with me. He said, well, Bob, I have no memory of the man. I was only 9 months old when he died. He said, my mother remarried, and the man who's my stepfather is really the man who in my heart is my dad, and he's been a great dad, is a great dad. But he said, the story's been shared with me so many times that in the final weeks of my birth father's life, he knew he was dying. He was in a big bed at home. And every day he would ask to hold me. And as he would hold me, he would pray over me and ask that God, the Heavenly Father, would be a father to his little boy that he knew he was not going to live to raise. Now, as Neil shared this, Neil began to have tears. We were on Skype. I began to have tears. And Neil shared, he said, the first event that marked my life, I really believe, were the prayers of my birth father. So as a result of those prayers, I came to faith in Christ. As a result of those prayers, I now am privileged to serve the Lord in a full-time way. Well, my question and Neil's answer, I don't know, 3-4 minutes. It wasn't long. And a relationship that was good already went deeper. Now, I must share, this has become one of my favorite questions, but of all the times I've ever asked, the most emotional response I ever received was the first time from Neil. But every time I ask, the answers are fascinating. And in a little way, I'd like us to experience this today. In the chat, would everyone just share 1 or 2 events that have shaped who you are today? And you're really not going to have time to tell the story. You're kind of just going to have time to name the event in, 1 sentence or so. But I want to give you time, and Lysandra is going to share those, and look at the chat yourself so that you can read the other ideas as they begin to populate.
Okay, I feel the energy. People thinking, wow, Teresa shares taking an $89 8-week comedy class at our community college. Dr. Julie Donnelly, parents divorce, death of her first husband, grave illness, nearly died.
Oh,
Thank you
wow.
for sharing. Wow, powerful. Don shares laid off from manufacturing and moving south to a totally new area. Amy, several times moving as a child. Robert is sharing his brother-in-law died, and they became parents of their children of their 4 children.
Wow.
Wow. Claire shared no longer drinking alcohol. A failed promise from a very, wow, there's a lot of deep moving examples here. Cancer and divorce. Wow.
Well, thank you so much. You all are sharing your heart and trusting. You're demonstrating that this feels safe to you, and love what you shared here. We're honored. This has become one of my favorite questions, and let me just share one of the reasons it's become my favorite questions is, sometimes in the past when I did ask, I might ask, hey, tell me about your family. Well, that's a great question if everything in their family is good. But if they're just going through a divorce, or they have a child that's in trouble, asking about their family. Sometimes you're asking them to share a pain, something that's really painful. And another question I used to ask, hey, tell me about your work. Well, again, if they're gainfully employed, it's a great question. But if they've just been laid off, again, you're asking about something that's difficult. What I love about, hey, can you share the 3 to 4 events that most shaped who you are today, is it allows people to go wherever they want. And just like many of you demonstrated, you haven't asked a difficult question, but sometimes they feel free to share things that have been painful. But again, you haven't asked a question that demands that they share painful things. But it's always fascinating. Now, let me share another thing that we do here. And that is we frequently play ping pong with questions. And so if you ask a question, always be prepared that they may ask it back. Now, just for example, we greet each other in the morning. Good morning, how are you? And the usual response is good. How are you? And we could say it's a greeting, but we play ping pong with the questions. If you and I were having coffee and I said, I'm curious, what are your favorite places, favorite restaurants to go eat? Well, you would share those. But the most likely question you would ask me when you're done sharing is, well, Bob, what are your favorite restaurants? And so I'm just saying we do that with questions. So when you ask this, what are the 3 to 4 events most shaped your life? Be prepared. They're likely after they answer to say, well, Teresa, what are yours? Lysandra, what are your 3 or 4 events? You get the picture. Okay. Thank you all. What is the first thing required every time you ask a question? You have to listen. If you don't intend to listen, don't ask a question. Our granddaughter, who was 17, when she was 2, had a habit of asking a question and then running away. And we'd have to say, Claire, come back here. You just asked Papa a question. Now at 17, she no longer runs away. But, and again, we're forgiving of a 2-year-old. But if you're going to ask a question, you have to listen. Now, there are so many tips on becoming a better listener. And today I just want to share one with you, one that's been really helpful to me. Oh, before I get to the tip, on listening, Ken Blanchard said, when I ask people to talk about the best boss they ever had, they always mention one quality: listening. So who would like to become a better listener in 8 seconds? I don't need a volunteer for stage. I'm assuming all our hands go up. We talked about who would like to become or learn to lead with questions in 30 seconds. Well, this is even better. Becoming a better listener in 8 seconds. Well, I have a question. What sport has an 8-second clock? Now, every Texan knows this. I don't know about Pennsylvania people, but everybody in Texas knows this one. It is bull riding. And you don't have to be a fan of the sport, but in bull riding, there's an 8-second clock. To have a qualified ride, that bull rider has to stay on the bull for 8 seconds. Now, we can think of 8 seconds as being like next to nothing. To a bull rider, it's an eternity. If you've ever, again, you don't have to be a fan of the sport, but if you've ever just flipped channels and came across bull riding, watched just for a little bit, you quickly see that 80% of the bull riders, and we're talking about professional bull riders, not you or I getting on a bull, we're too smart to do that, but professional bull riders getting on and being knocked off in less than 8 seconds, because 8 seconds is an eternity. Now, some of you are thinking, now, Bob, you said you had a tip on listening, and now you're talking about bull riding. What in the world does bull riding have to do with listening? I'm so glad you asked. Research shows, and this is fascinating, that when the average person asks a question, we only wait 2 or 3 seconds for an answer. If they don't answer in 2 or 3 seconds, the silence is so deafening that we have to fill the air with words. So we'll either answer the question ourselves, ask another question, or just move on in the conversation. And here's the kicker on this, with no self-awareness of what we've just done. And so the 8-second rule is ask your question and then count silently to yourself, 1001, 1002, 1003. There's times I've gotten to 1030. The longer the silence, the better their answer. Now, of course, if I was in your office or your home and said, which way to the restroom, you'd answer that immediately. But if I said, I've got a question for you, what would you say has been one of your greatest failures that's actually led to one of your greatest successes? If you've never been asked that question before, how helpful would it be if at 2 or 3 seconds, I ask you another question? Not very helpful. But if I'll remain silent and give you time to think, I could well be the beneficiary of an incredible story, an incredible piece of wisdom, but only if I give you the gift of silence. Now, some of you are actually going to hate me for the 8-second rule, because later today, you're going to ask somebody a question, and at 2 or 3 seconds, you're going to start talking because silence is going to bother you. And then you're going to remember the 8-second rule, and you're going to say, oh, darn that, Tiede. You see, up to now, you've just been in oblivion, but now going forward, you will have awareness. Hey, it still happens to me. Here's what I do when I violate the 8-second rule. I start talking too soon. I'll say, time out, my bad. I asked you a question. I didn't even give you time to think. And I started talking again. Forgive me. Here's the question again. And this time I'm going to be silent. You take as much time as you need. I've never had anyone be unforgiving when I did that. And yeah, it's a bit of another confession. From time to time, I violated, but that's how I get around it now, is call the timeout. Well, Dave Kerpen said, listening and letting people talk is the key to winning them over in life and business and all human relationships. And then I love this quote, being heard is so close to being loved, they're almost indistinguishable. Wow. Well, as we wrap up, I want to invite you to become a subscriber to my blog. Subscribing is free. If you go to leadingwithquestions.com and cursor towards the bottom, you'll find a place to enter your email address and click on subscribe. And when you do, you'll be joining leaders from over 190 countries who are committed to increasing their leadership effectiveness. Then, as Teresa shared earlier, I have 5 free ebooks pictured here. And they're available for free download at leadingwithquestions.com/books. Or if you just go to leadingwithquestions.com at the top, you'll see the word books. You can click on that. And these are also available in a multitude of other languages. So if your first language is other than English, or you have colleagues or friends or staff whose first language is other, even though they're fluent in English, you can search and see what's available. And again, everything is free. Then the 3rd edition, the one Teresa shared with you, it has been an Amazon bestseller in the category of business communication. But how would you like to receive a complimentary signed 3rd edition book? Here's the deal. Already there's been over 900 book ambassadors, and book ambassadors receive a complimentary signed book. And Lysandra is putting the link in the chat. And if you click on that link, you have not committed to being a book ambassador. That link will give you more information on how you can become a book ambassador. And as you read and consider that, there will be a place there then that you can click on to enter your email and mailing address so we can actually mail you a book. But I'd be delighted to send every one of you a complimentary signed book and to invite you to consider becoming a book ambassador. So check that out, get the information there. And and would just be honored to have you join. And if you were to count all the pictures on this page, there are 900 of them. And I think at last count, we're now up to 925, and we hope to get to 1,000. Leadership is not as much about knowing the right answers as it is about knowing the right questions. Teresa, thank you. I turn it back to you.
Oh, Bob, thank you. That was awesome. How fast did that time go? Boom, boom, boom. Felt like 5 minutes. It was that fast. Thank you for the interaction. Thank you for your thought leadership. Did everybody pick up at least one question that they are going to ask going forward? I think all of us did. Look at it. We've got all kinds of wonderful emojis coming up here. People are sharing their thoughts. It was really, really wonderful. And you are so incredibly generous. Who offers a free signed book? Who does? So I love my book. Of course, I'm kind of a leadership and management training devotee. This is a big part of my life, but this is really awesome stuff. So if you don't already have the book, make sure you get the book. And Bob, stay in touch. Let me know how I can help you.
I will. Thank you, Teresa, for the honor of being your guest on Meet the Author today.
Cool, cool. All right. We can stop our recording. Let's do that.